Alright, here's an update on my third-person combat template. A couple of small changes first. Increase the world gravity so you fall a little bit faster, just so it feels a little bit more apt. This brown enemy now is like 9,199 health, so you're not going to kill it. So I can go in and test all the stuff I need to. I sped up some of the attacks just so it feels a bit better to me. That also includes the dash rate, so you dash. I increased the dash rate, so you dash. I think it's still the same amount of time that you're spent dashing, but the dash animation itself is slower, so you get to move a little bit sooner. It just feels a little bit better, which is the majority of these changes. I changed how some of the what's it called, input buffering works. So like now, before you weren't actually like resetting combos. I realized that if you like go to attack and then dodge again, no matter how long you waited, if your next attack would be the next second that string. So that was a bug. I fixed that. So now it'll reset the combo string after any input buffer. After it's checked for everything that could possibly chain into attack or isn't attack. If you haven't have any of those saved, it'll just stop and reset it all. Let's see. I gave knockback to the third light attack, so I can test some stuff there. And that's more into the hit reaction stuff, which we'll get into in a bit. And then I changed how the launching enemies worked. Before it was just passing in the force, but now it passes in. It calculates like the player, where it takes the player's forward like attack direction and multiplies it by a force to get a final force that goes someplace. Because before I wouldn't, if I wanted to like launch an enemy like I do here, where they like fly backwards, it wouldn't do that properly. So now I got to take the input direction in there and fixes that. Another thing about launching characters is that before I was using the actual like node launch character, which is from the system itself, but from like the Unreal system itself, but that actually puts the player in a falling state. So you notice in my last videos, whenever I go to attack, whenever I stop attacking, I'd like be put into like a falling state like temporarily. And I wanted to avoid that, and I tried a lot of different methods, but decided to just essentially remake launch character. So I made my own thing called push character, which does exactly what I think launch character does, but it just doesn't set it to falling unless the Z velocity is negative. So that's useful. Moving on to some more permissions. I now added the options to move while dodging and move while attacking. Move while attacking I'm having issues with right now. I think that's because of how I'm doing movement. But it's because I'm like in between, transition between like movement systems right now, so I'm not gonna show that right now. But moving while dodging is something you can do now. It's just slide, but you can like influence your direction, which feels a little bit better. It's almost like a roll somewhat. You can't like fully go in the opposite direction. You only just slow down, which is fine for me right now. I also have an option for backpedaling now, which plays into my first major feature I made, which is strafing. So now when you lock on an enemy, you have the option to toggle on strafing in the editor, I mean. So your player will strafe automatically. They do if you do enable strafing. So you can go like left, right, backwards, and if you go backwards, you'll have the backpedal penalty if you choose to have it, and that's something you can go in and adjust the speed of. Where is my cursor? There it is. Why is it gray? This is so hard to see. So you can go here and adjust like the top strafe speed. You can toggle if you want it enabled. You can toggle the trace speed. Right now it's the default. I think the default is like 200, but the value I put out right now is 300, so it just feels a little better. Let's see. Let me turn backpedaling off. Ain't nobody want that. Yeah, strafing is in. Also have now, you saw a bit of it, I have hit reactions in now, so it's also on the movement struct. So in the move struct before you have like launch data and like damage and all that, but now there's also an option for an enumerator for the hit reaction you want. So there's like a lot of different hit animations in there, and you just go down the list and click the one you want. It'll throw it in there at the end of the animation. So you have like stagger back, you get like the hit in the face animation. This one you go flying backwards, and then you have the flat, which is actually just a full. It's just the ending part of a different animation. But I doing a check for it the second you hit the attack. If the character is on the ground, it'll do that attack. That animation, I mean. Let's see. and each enemy has an overrideable animation, hit reaction animation per class. So like this alternate enemy could have completely different reactions to, like, the standard basic enemy over here. It's just a matter of going into that specific script and just changing the drop down box to get what you want. So that's pretty cool. And it also dynamically changes how long the hit animation is based on how much hit stun you want for the attack. So if I want it to be like, say the actual animation is like 1 second long, like the stagger animation is actually just 1 second long. If I wanted the hit stun to be like 120 frames, I put it in 120, it'll go and it'll slow it down to half its speed to give me exactly 2 seconds. And that's something the designer can toggle on and off. Because it's not something that, I know a lot of games don't really do that, but if for some reason, if you want to do that, you can. So you can, like, instead of like changing completely different animations for the hit stun you want, you can make it, exactly the way you want. Probably not the best for PvP games since the player is really looking for stuff like that. Let's see. And for air hit reactions, what I have is I have it set to loop, or depending on the animation, I loop or pause on a certain frame and then wait for the character to hit the ground. So like for the spinning one, which is actually kind of funny, they'll just keep spinning in the air until they hit the ground. So if I do it from the air, let's say they just keep spinning. It's like a football. So love that. It's kind of, the thing I'm laughing at is kind of bad because that's just, animation itself is fine. It's just that the force I'm using in the air, since there's no like air friction for when you're falling, you kind of just like fly through the air at that speed. So it's fine for the ground. It's the same force for the ground. But the reason why I haven't changed is because I'm probably gonna have like air attacks for any game that's gonna have like launching. So I'm not gonna adjust the forces for this specific attack when I'm probably not gonna use it as an air attack in an actual game. Another thing to notice is that enemies now have called an enemy info widget, and it has the name of the enemy, their health bar, and then one of the bars I have to toggle off now is the stamina bar, because I'm not using stamina for anything right now, but it's there. So every time you hit an enemy, it'll appear for like 4.5 seconds and then go away. So gives you a little bit more information about how close your enemy is to death. But it's up to the player to remember like how long that's. Or a player to remember like who's low on health because it goes away after a bit. Of course, the designer can toggle that as well, but I don't currently have a like an editor modifier for that. It's just currently something I got to go into the widget and adjust. Let's see. The last major thing I did was vaulting. Let me reset this enemy. Because a lot of action games now have vaulting instead of like straight up like dashing. So now if you're near an enemy within a certain specifiable range, you'll just jump over them. It's pretty cool. And you see here I'm doing a initial ray cast, because what happens is that you're actually not like, I have the colliders on so you can see that you're not really like, the collider itself isn't going over the enemy, it's going through them. So what happens is that it shoots out a capsule cast forward to see at that distance that you're specifying to go beyond the enemy, can you like occupy that space? If you can't, it just gives you the location of that capsule that failed that cast test. Like you'll see here, I have them against the wall. Try to cast them, I can't go like past them, so I kind of like I'm actually landing. In this case, I'm landing on top of them and hitting the ground immediately because I can't occupy the space on top of them either. So that's how that works. It's actually pretty neat. Before I was trying to like, I had my first iteration of it, you're going directly above them, getting a force down, and I was like, this is kind of weird, because if I was to do it like right here, like on this enemy here, what happened is that I would not be able to into the ground there, because I'd like start jumping on their heads. So and I didn't want that. I had to go into like how if these enemies can be stepped on. And I had to go in and like code some sliding things instead of like the usual jump on the enemy and then get a random force off the enemy that you can't occupy that space. I have to like code some sliding. I didn't want to do that, so I just have the collider itself will go in a straight line, but the animation itself looks like it's jumping over and outside of its collider box. That's pretty cool. And also another thing to notice that the collider itself for the test is about, I think the padding is set to 10, so this makes it so that, we had an enemy here in the corner. Yeah. So this makes it so that you can't occupy that space. like exactly. So it prevents the player from getting in a hole made perfectly for them, theoretically, right? So if they can't occupy that space plus 10, they're not going to be able to get to the vault, in which case they're just going to like stop in place. It's a little bit jank, but like the player is probably not going. Well, I can't say the player's probably not going to, but the player is probably going to realize at some point like, oh, I can't, vault into this corner, or I shouldn't want the vault directly into this corner. So it's going to look weird, but understandably, at least it's giving them their reaction. It's going to make them invincible for that amount of time, so it's whatever. Take a look at the code here. We switch windows. I've been messing with movement, as I was saying before, so I got these permissions and adjustment conditionals and adjusting movement and rotation, all that. This is where all the slow movement and the back pedal penalty comes in. You can see that here, applying all the back pedal penalty and the strafing and all of that. Currently a problem someplace in here. I got to look into that. And then this is the slow rotation. When you dash, when you look around, this actually slows the rotation of the character itself, so you can't like dash and then like do a 360, like as you're dashing, because that's gonna look really weird. So I adjust the rotation there. In the middle of working on this system here, calculating the walk speed. That's more for like RPGs where you have like slows, speeds, and all that. This is so it takes like an array of slows, and it will like find the largest value in it. And if the designer wants the slows to stack, it'll go through and loop through all of the slows and apply them to the movement speed. If he wants it to, if they want the slows to not stack, it'll just find the largest value and just apply that. And the same goes for hastes over here for increasing movement speed. But currently nothing is using this system, so it's kind of just sitting here because I have to fully implement it because it does some movement speed reset. So if I just kind of like not use it right now and kind of half use it, it's gonna mess with some stuff. That's why it's kind of toggled out. All right. Let's see. I think it's largely the same. Here's strafing. And strafing is kind of split up between some places between here and also an animation blueprint here. So strafing will start out and it stores copies of the original speed, and then it'll start subtracting. Oh wait, no. It'll get the strafe speed and just set it to that. And toggle it as strafing. Then it'll start setting the actor's rotation to the vector between the locked on enemy and between the player and the locked on enemy, and just keep setting that every whatever this ticket's set to, probably like 0.01 or something small. And it'll just keep checking, and then if they're not locked on anymore, it'll call the strafe stop, which resets everything. Pretty straightforward. And then the animation blueprint, it'll cast it to a third-person character, and it'll check if it's strafing. If they are strafing, it'll see if they're locked on and all that, and it'll pass the input direction into a blend space. Can I? There it is. Pass to all the blend space here, so you can see all the strafing, mixing, and stuff like that. That's pretty cool. So what's this? That's the enemy getting that a bit. Here we have the vaulting. So dashing and vaulting are come from the same like dodge function, right? Vaulting isn't its own thing, so it shares all the properties of dashing. It'll go through all the conditionals of dashing and whatnot, and then and the same thing goes with like the dodge number as well. So you can only vault like up to a maximum of the consecutive dodges. So it'll go through all that, then it'll go here and check and see if you use vault instead of dash. If that's true, it'll attempt to vault first. Then it goes to the actual vault function, which this was a monstrosity. I sat down thinking this was going to be. I knew it was going to be a little bit difficult because I had to research games to figure out how they like really did this. And so I went through a couple iterations here, but this is the one I settled on. So it'll go through and it'll like, or walk check. Is that over here? That's someplace. Walk check is someplace. I don't know where that's at, but it's. Where do you go? Oh yeah, that does something over there. Let's go back to the start. It'll check if the player is walking. gonna stop my double negatives here. The player's not walking, false. Is bolting. Yeah, so it goes in and it'll say it used to determine attack direction, which is the same thing as the auto lock for tagging. And I kind of modified it here so that it returns a chosen actor, and it returns the value if it's chosen an actor. Then it goes here and checks to see if that enemy is valid. And if it's valid, and if the system did choose that actor, it'll send it through, and it goes here, and it asks it to a character to see if the character itself is falling. If the character is this character is actually walking. That's kind of a weird way to put that. If the character is not walking, it'll set it to false and says that it can't dodge. That's considered a vault fail. And then there's another variable here. If the vault is failed, does the player want to dodge instead? So this is if they're out of range, or if it turns out that what you're trying to dodge towards isn't a viable target, like if they're in the air or something like that, or if they're like pending for death, you can't vault over them. So it just goes through a dodge if you want that. If it is successful, if the vaulting is proper, it'll set it to the castle component to get the information it needs to continue this. So first it'll play the animation, which is the jumping over. And then it goes to this here, which is the big thing I needed to do for this. It'll get the castle radius and all of that, and the actual location, and it will go in and it'll calculate that the place behind the act the player that the character is going to wind up at, which is going to be the actor location plus like the capsule's radius, the half radius capsule, and then it'll go through and add that padding to it here. So and then it'll put that into the capsule size to check for. And yeah, it'll check here to see if it's been blocked. If it has been blocked, it'll just return the hit location, which is the point where that capsule has been spawned. Before I was using the impact. I was using the impact point before, so that's like if the outer edge of like the capsule hit something, then it will spawn the player at that location, which wasn't right, because like if the capsule is like deep in a wall and it detects that location in a wall, it will spawn the player in a wall. So that was a fun way to figure that out. But yeah, it'll go through all that and check to see if that's possible. And then it'll actually move the player to there, easing in and all of that, so it looks like they're actually jumping. And then all the rest of this is just checking if it's over. So check to see if the animation's over, and then like if it's the last dodge, it'll actually play another animation where they're like stabbing the ground, looking like they're recovering from like a really high fall or something like that. So that way, it's kind of the same thing as the double dash thing, where you have a slow dash before. It's just so that if the player exhausts all of their like dodging options, if they've been like spamming it or something, the enemy has the option or has the capability to punch the player for that with those extra recovery frames. Okay, what else did I do here? So the auto reset for the saved attacks, that stuff I was talking about earlier. So before it wouldn't reset, but now it automatically resets after a certain amount of time. If the input buffer detects that there isn't like any other possible way you could go into an attack after a certain point in time. So like this is the end of all of the attacks and all of the attack cancelable options. If that turns out to be false, and it'll go through the rest of this and it'll set combo reset. What else is new? It's like color coded some of this because it's been far too many times where I tried to scroll up looking for like my reset function for like dodge, and I get here and I go through like half of this and I'm like, why am I resetting attacking and dodging? I'm like, oh, this is combo attack. So now it's red for attacks, blue for defense options, and yellow for hit detection. None of that's changed. Now every move has the option to reset velocity on hit. I need that to be false for like a launching, or like not launching move, for a drop attack. One of the drop attacks don't reset the velocity on hit, otherwise the player would just like be in the air while the enemy's on the ground taking their full force, and I didn't want that. So now every move has the option to do that, but I'm probably only going to use it for just drop attacks. Let's see here. And hit reaction. The way hit reactions are actually like worked into this, is that they're all put into the I made a struct hit reaction. It has a hit reaction and the hit stun itself. And you can go here, like choose which one you want, and then put the hit stun there, and put that into a hit reaction data array for the move. So like if there are multiple hit reactions for a move, that's why it's an array rather than just like a single struct in there. Yeah, it'll go in and it'll use the same index as damage and hit reaction in a bit. I'm still gotta increment that and all that stuff. I haven't done it yet because I need to figure out exactly where I'm going to do that. It's going to be at the end someplace, but I gotta work some issues out with that before I do that. Anyways, yeah, it'll take the hit reaction out there and take the stun, and it'll pop that in there, and it goes into the hit. What used to be the hit stop function, now called hit stop and hit stun function. In the enemy. I think that was all the stuff here. So we're gonna go into the enemy class now. Yeah, it's called hit stop, which is largely the same, but now it casts to the animation blueprint and all that, and sets the hit stun time and the desired hit stun time and all that. And it goes here and says, is it falling? If it's not falling, if it's still on the ground, just play the animation. If it is falling, currently right now it just gives them the desired reaction, but I'm eventually going to go in and put in aerial specific hit stuns. So it looks like actually being jumped as opposed to just like, being in the air while doing an animation. Looks like you're standing on the floor. And then after that, all the rest of that's the same. So it goes to play hit animation here, and it puts in the desired reaction into a select as the index, and then it goes in and chooses all the different hit reactions here. So this is where, if you want this enemy to have different hit reactions, you can go in and just like change the default value to like, you change that to whatever the stagger back animation is for this specific enemy. Since this is all like, I have human animations right now, I'm just using human animations. After that, it'll go in and it'll get the actual play length of that specific animation, and it'll return as a value, and then divide that by the desired hit stun time, and then clamp it just so it doesn't get something ridiculous. And then that would be the play rate it would need for that hit stun time to be the time that the enemy is stuck in that animation. So once the animation is over, they're out of hit stun. It's just that simple. And then here's the option for if the designer does not want that to happen. They can set it to false, and it'll just choose 1 as the default play rate. That way it keeps everything consistent. If you wanted one of these animations to be faster than one of the other ones, you just go into the actual animation and change that. Let's see, I think that's should be it for here. All that hasn't changed over there. The animation blueprint, I have to go in and do some of that stuff here. So we saw strafing before, but probably bring up the montages. Here's a funny one. Hit knockdown. So hit knockdown. It's just a loop. So what I do is I have to put into sections of like the loop itself, of like being in the air, being hit, and all that. The start fall animation, like you starting to hit the ground and hitting the ground itself and getting up off the ground. The actual like base section is the default, which is getting hit into the air and then whirling for eons essentially. And I call this ground check for loop here for this anim notify as a branching point, and it goes into the anim blueprint. And this one function, this whole thing goes through and looks for this looping and or pausing, and then it goes in and it has a ground check. It sets a variable called ground check started, and that is over here. And after it's going through and sets like the speed and all that, it'll get here, and if the hit stun time is greater than 0, or if this falls, like, yeah, I was in the middle of doing something here. This needs to be cleaned up, but I'll get to that in a bit. Let's take and see if the ground check has been started. If it has, it'll start updating ground check, which is back over there. If it hasn't, it'll just go back to strafe enable. That way, they're not unnecessarily running this for as long as it doesn't need to be. I'm going to go to ground check, and from ground check, it'll keep checking if it's falling or not. If the enemy is still falling. If it's true, it doesn't do anything. But if it's false, it'll check ground check started off, so it stops running the update. It'll get the current active montage. It'll check and see if it's the original montage that this function was called with, right? Because this is only called from anim notify. So it'll have whatever it's called from, it'll get that montage, set it to the asking montage. And then here it'll check and be sure, have you not transitioned to some other animation, some other hit montage while you were in the process of checking ground start. If it has, it won't do anything because it's not trying to like go back here and mess with an animation that it has no business dealing with. So this end montage, I'll go here to a do once, which is only reset from actually calling these loops, or the anim notifies. And it'll check if it's the loop style or if it's the pause style. So when this first starts out, there are two animation notifiers you can call. There's the ground check for loops, which is, as it says, for loops. So this one, this hilarious animation is for a loop, obviously. So it'll check the loop style. And then if it is the loop style, it'll go through and it'll hit it to start fall. So every animation, this is dependent on every animation having a section to it. So it has start fall, and the other one has hit ground. So if it's not loop style, it goes for the pause style, where it takes one frame animation and just pauses it, because it looks like there's still in the air. So like if the enemy has reached like terminal velocity, you don't need a loop animation for them like falling straight down, right? So you can just pause it on that frame, unless it's like fabric or something like that. But I don't have fabric, so here we go. It'll pause that montage, and it'll go here, yes, and then it'll jump to the section of hitting the ground, because you're going to pause at the point where there's like falling in the air, they're about to hit the ground but not there yet. It'll resume the animation. Yeah, and that's that. This notifies here for like if you were to do like the drop attack on an enemy that's like currently on the ground. This is called immediately. I can actually bring up the animation. Air knockback. Is it? Yeah, so it'll bring up the animation. At frame 0, it'll check and see like, are you already on the ground when this happens? If that's the case, it'll just skip to the hit ground part, which is right there. So like at the point where they're on the ground, and it'll play that whole animation from there, and play them getting back up. So that's instead of me having to go in and like just cut this animation up and then make another montage calling it not splat or anything like that. I just call it in that specific section. So I'm saving space in all the folders. So I'm not copying anything, and also just time, because I don't want to cut up animations like that if I don't have to. So yeah, hit stop, and I'm not really using it. It's for temporarily pausing an animation, but I don't know why I would need that at this point. I think that was an earlier version of this, but I haven't deleted it yet because I might change it to something else. Is there anything else? I think that's it. It's all the stuff I added. Strafing and the hit reactions was the big thing. Thing was the other big thing. Yeah. So next update is going to be AI, so it's going to take me a while because I got to figure out how to do AI, like because Unreal Engine has like an AI tree, something like that. So I got to learn all of that. So this update's going to be a bit, probably going to be the only thing on the update, but I'm probably going to do a lot into AI if I can. But yeah, that's the update.